Hello people of YouTube, it's Deepak here, and welcome to DCS World 2.7.10 and Eagle Dynamics FA-18C Hornet module. Welcome to tutorial 6, Air-to-Ground Radar Modes. Today we'll be covering the air-to-ground radar modes of the AN/APG-73 radar, which is the radar installed in this version of the Hornet. In the order I'll be covering them, those are Map Mode, the Expanded Modes, Ground Moving Target or GMT Mode, and Sea Mode, which is used for targeting ships. The aircraft in the real world also has a Terrain Avoidance Mode, but that is not currently modelled in this version of the aircraft. So, first things first, how do we gain access to our radar? Well, let's take a little look at the console, the right console, and check the sensors panel. We need to make sure that our radar is in operate mode. If it's not powered, then we're going to have a hard time making use of it. Next thing then, if we look back up at the front cockpit, on the right DDI, in nav mode, by default we have the attack radar display in air-to-air mode. We do have the option of pressing this push button to flip it to surface mode. And in the same button will bring us back to the air-to-air mode. What I tend to do, however, is I tend to just put the aircraft into air-to-ground master mode. In air-to-ground master mode, the right DDI will always be in surface or air-to-ground radar mode. With that done, let's focus down on the right DDI and take a little look at the controls and symbology that we have here. First thing I'll do is cover all of the controls around the outside. Down the right hand side here we have confirmation of the current range scale. We're currently at 40 nautical miles, and we have up and down arrows to increase and decrease that range scale. And sometimes it'll take a couple of moments. It needs to wait for the radar sweep to update the image. And we can bring that all the way down to 5 nautical miles and back up to 40. We're going to leave it at 40 for just now. That's perfect for our uses right now. The next option we have is freeze. If I press freeze, the image on the display will be frozen, as the name implies. We'll have the ability to refine our targeting and take a good hard look at the image without it changing. However, in this mode the radar is still emitting and the image is still being updated in the background. As soon as we take it out of freeze mode, the image will immediately update with any information that's gathered since we entered freeze mode. Reset will reset all of the radar settings to default. You'll see that it flipped from fan to pencil mode. I'll cover that in a moment. So if we had changed anything from the default settings, that would immediately put it back to defaults. We then have silence. If I press silence, the radar actually goes into standby. It stops emitting, and as per the air-to-air radar mode, we get this cross, just absolutely confirming to us that the radar is not currently emitting. If I come out of silent mode, it'll take a couple of moments to do its scans, but then the image will be brought back up on the screen. Across the bottom, we have data mode. If I go into data, we can choose some options about the radar display. In map mode, those are the declutter, which is on by default. If I turn off the declutter, we get the horizon bars and the flight path marker. If I enter declutter mode again, then those are gone. For air-to-ground, I tend to leave those off because you're not going to be tend to be maneuvering while you're using the air-to-ground mode. We also have the gain control here, and this allows us to increase and reduce the gain of the actual radar returns. Now, it's important to note that in map mode, which we're in just now, the radar is just scanning left and right, and wherever the radar beam strikes the ground, there will be a return. That return will vary in intensity. So certain objects don't reflect radar energy, like water. You'll notice that all the water around here is just dark. So this is all the sea. And you can see the edge of the terrain here. The terrain itself reflects quite well, and then man-made objects and certain other types of objects reflect the radar energy with greater intensity, and they will appear brighter on this display. And adjusting the gain can make it easier to tease out those details in the radar image. And those are the only options we have in the data page in map mode. Let's come back out of data. We then have channel. In the real aircraft, that would allow us to change the radar channel being used. That's not modelled in the sim. You then have the current Azimuth Scan. It's at 120, which is the maximum. We can bring that down to just a 20-degree scan here in the middle, and we then have options for 45, 90, and the full 120. Of course, the smaller the azimuth scan, the quicker the radar update rate will be, and so you're going to tend to want to use the lowest setting that you can get away with. Down the left-hand side, we have the kind of master radar mode. We can flip between air and surface, as I demonstrated before. We're going to leave it in the surface mode. ECCM is not implemented, but that's the anti-electronic countermeasures system that the radar has. So if you're being jammed, basically, this would help it overcome that. You've then got the currently selected air-to-ground mode. We're currently in map. If I push this, we can switch to GMT, ground moving target. Push it again, we can be in C mode. And then push it again, we're back to map, which is the mode that we're going to cover now. You've got the operating mode of the radar. It can be in standby or operate. Currently we're in operate. We've got selections for the expanded modes across the top, which I'll cover in just a moment. These are different zoomed in modes. And then we have the radar beam width setting. We can be in pencil or fan. Pencil mode uses a very thin radar beam mode, which gives you more accurate details. However, it takes longer to complete the scan. If I put it into fan mode, the image will update more regularly. However, it will be a bit more blurred and imprecise. We're going to leave it in the pencil mode for now. At the top right corner also I've got the diamond confirming that this is my current sensor of interest. If I pushed sensor select switch to the left, okay. That looks like a bug. That's very strange indeed. Stand by. Let me see why that's doing that. I wasn't able to change the sensor select mode. Oh, because the left DDI doesn't have something that'll accept sensor of interest. That's fine. So I guess if I pushed it down, there we go. So if I didn't have this display as my current sensor of interest, pushing sensor select switch to the right would give me the diamond in the top right, and it would give me the radar cursor as normal. And I can now move this around. So a basic operation is I put my cursor on the thing that I want to target, and I depress my TDC, and I get this cross. And the cross is called the designation cross, and that is my currently designated sensor point of interest. If I was using a targeting pod, which we'll cover in a later tutorial, that would immediately slew to this point on the ground. And if I zoom out and take a little look at the HUD, I can see that on the HUD, I have the sensor point of interest diamond. It's currently flashing because it's outside of the field of view of my HUD. And we've got here an arrow pointing towards it because it's out of the field of view, and number of degrees off the nose that sensor point of interest currently is. Down here we have target information. So currently selected target is 36 miles away, and that's just a little confirmation there. If we zoom back down on the display, actually one thing I didn't cover before is we actually have own ship information as well. Bottom left we've got airspeed in knots and current Mach number. Bottom right we've got altitude in feet, and at the top here we've got the current heading 240 degrees. So with a currently designated point, I can press EXP number 1, and what that's going to do is it's going to give me a zoomed in view. Basically using all the same settings, using the same kind of radar image that's already been generated, we're simply zooming that in a little bit. Now EXP1 has a maximum range of 40 nautical miles, and with a designated point it will be ground stabilized. So even if I maneuver the aircraft or get closer or further away, it will try to retain this point on the ground in the field of view of EXP1 up to the radar's gimbal limits. So I could actually maneuver around and still retain this image. The image might start to kind of blur and update in funny ways, but otherwise it would basically work. In EXP1, I get one additional option. I can do fast updates, where the image will update more rapidly. However, you then lose detail in the image. So I'm going to take it out of the fast mode. It'll take a bit longer to update, but we'll get a more detailed image, as you can see here. Now, I'm going to press nose wheel steering to undesignate that point on the ground. I'm going to come out of EXP1, and I'm going to show you what happens if you try to enter EXP1 without a designated point. If I just press it, it's actually going to show me a snowplow view. So in the snowplow mode, it's going to show me the area that it would select for EXP1. If I press TDC depress, it will enter EXP1, and it will keep that area. That's the area that it's going to display. That's all C, so it's just black. We're not going to see anything. Let's take it out of EXP1, put it back into pencil mode, and let's return to the area that we actually want to take a look at. I kind of want to target this area here. There we go. Let's try EXP2. Jump straight into EXP2. EXP2 is very similar to EXP1, but we are now even more zoomed in, and we can pick out even more detail in the image. Again, we have the fast and slow options for the refresh rate. In EXP2, we're also limited to 40 nautical miles in the same way as EXP1, and it's ground stabilized. And this works in the same way as I showed if you don't have a designated point on the ground. If I just press EXP2, it's again going to show me this little snowplow, and I can depress the TDC and it will give me EXP2 on the snowplow. But it's far more useful to... Oh, I actually bumped the range there. Let's bump it back down. It's far more useful to have a pre-designated point. So let's go ahead and do that again. I've now got my pre-designated point. So if we bump this into EXP2, like I said, we're getting a little bit more detail. Something to note is that the radar makes a lot of use of Doppler Shift in order to produce these images. And it doesn't produce very good detail within 15 degrees left and right of the nose. And then the further out to the right that you get, the sharper their image is going to be. I'm going to demonstrate this a little bit by bringing the aircraft out of active pause. And I'm going to maneuver the aircraft to the left a little bit. And we should note that as I get that target area even further off the nose, I should start to get a slightly more coherent and easy to recognize image. So we're now 25 degrees off the nose. I'm going to roll out level here. Check that it's in autopilot. It's not. I'll pop it into autopilot. And we're getting a little bit closer now. And if I zoom down on this, we'll see that we have actually a little bit better detail on that just now. Now, this is important because EXP3 mode is a completely different mode. It's synthetic aperture mapping. And in that mode, you don't get an image at all within 15 degrees of the nose. And again, the further off to one side or the other that you are, the sharper their image is going to be. So let's demonstrate that. Now that has a 30 nautical mile limit, so let me see, are we actually within that maximum range just now? We just came into 30 now. So now that we're in range, let's go ahead and hit EXP3. It's now going to do the synthetic aperture mapping, and you can see in this mode it's very slow. It takes quite a bit of time to produce an image, but the image that it produces is going to be of the highest quality. And I can now actually see features. This is an airfield, so I can now see features of this airfield. I actually want to target just the start of the runway here, so I'm going to move my cursor and depress TDC, and it's going to take a bit of time to update that image, but eventually it should give me a target designation on that point. Let's give it some time. Yeah, it's pretty slow. Huh, interesting. It hasn't moved the designated point. Yep, it's not moving the designated point. Okay, let's go back to EXP2. Let's designate that point now. Yeah, it's actually not working. I think that's a bug. Because in the specials menu, the aircraft has a realistic or non-realistic TDC mode. I currently have the non-realistic mode selected because in the real aircraft, you would have to push and depress TDC and move it while keeping the TDC depressed in order to move that designation. I don't have that mode on, so it should allow me to just click and release. But sadly, the game is actually not working. That looks like a bug. And now the designation just started. Oh, the designation is moving because I'm now moving out of the maximum field of view of the radar. Yeah, that would explain that. So the image will start sliding away now slowly as we reach the azimuth limits. And now we've got a blank display. It dropped into EXP2 automatically, and we're probably out of the field of view for EXP2 as well. Yeah, you can see that the terrain is now just on the edge of the radar scan. Okay, so that's interesting. That is actually a bug. It should be possible to simply move the cursor and depress it on a new location. I assume in the future that Eagle Dynamics will fix that, so I'm just going to leave that in just now. That pretty much covers all of the operation of it. As I said before, as you're refining your target designation here with the radar, that is your sensor point of interest, and if you're utilizing something like your targeting pod, you would then be able to view the area that you've targeted and further refine that target designation. Or you can simply employ weapons directly using radar. The nice thing about the radar is that you're not limited by things like cloud cover and so on, or time of day. So in situations where perhaps you would not be able to refine a target location using the targeting pod, you can get pretty accurate target designation just using the radar in those cases. So it's a very nice all-weather capability. Okay, let's move on to ground moving target. I'm going to reset the simulation and I'll show you that. Okay, so I've reset the simulation, I'm back inbound, and I'll now demonstrate ground moving target mode. So we can click the map push button here and we'll be in GMT. By default, it's going to just show you the area that's being scanned, and it's going to show you the radar head scanning back and forth. It's also defaulting to 20 nautical miles. Let's bump it back out to 40, which we had before, and just like in the air-to-air modes, we're going to get bricks. So I'm going to push sensor select switch to the right to get my cursor in here, and you can see that I have two bricks, it would seem, one bright and one not so bright. I'm going to go ahead and put my cursor on one of these and TDC depress, and that hasn't actually locked it. Let's try again. It is still possible to get a target designation point on the ground, just like in the map mode. Yeah, for some reason that's not designated. Let's try again. It should be possible for me to lock up this target, although it might be difficult at this range. It does default to the 20 nautical mile range. That's probably for a good reason. While we're waiting, we have the option of enabling Interleaved Mode. In Interleaved Mode, it will do one map scan followed by one GMT scan over and over again. And so in this mode, we get some kind of indication as to the position of the terrain while we're doing this. I'm going to take it out of Interleaved Mode for just now, because then we'll get a more accurate scan for the ground-moving targets. Yeah, I'm going to wait until this target gets a bit closer in, and it should be possible to lock it a bit better. Because what's supposed to happen is we're supposed to be able to pick it up just like an air target, and we'd get some further information about it. I'm going to let it get a bit closer. Should be just, yeah, it's going to be approaching range very shortly. And this is a ground vehicle, by the way, that's driving up and down the runway at the airfield to my front. So we get this faint contact now. This faint contact is actually a ship, so I don't think that should actually be showing up in this mode, but we're getting it very faint. Let me see what happens if I try to lock that one, actually. No, that one didn't lock. Okay, let's try getting this one. I'm going to undesignate and then press on this, and it is absolutely not working. Why is it not working? We're supposed to get information on the display about the target's direction of travel, current speed, and things like that, but for some reason it is not working at all. Let me try turning a little bit and putting our aircraft at more of an angle to that target. That might help things, because the radar does have some difficulties when things are right on the nose. So the location that I'm locking up is actually pretty accurate. That's basically where that vehicle is. But we're not continuing to track it, which is a feature of this radar mode. Let's try again. Yep, it's absolutely not working correctly. What should happen once we have that lock, let me pause here actually so I can discuss the symbology that we should be seeing. On the left hand side it should tell us the speed in knots of that ground vehicle, and on the right hand side it should give us the vehicle's heading. We should also have a little heading arrow, or a line really, showing us in what direction that target is travelling. So anyway, let's bring it out of pause. I'm going to try one more time. If this isn't going to work, I'm going to give up. And we'll try and do something else. I'll show you the C mode instead. Yeah, it absolutely will not work. I wonder, is there a speed gate that we can adjust here? No, there isn't. Strange, because it's absolutely showing us the brick, so that makes it quite easy for us to pick out where the target should be, and the target designation that I'm putting on the ground will be pretty accurate, but it's better if we're actually tracking the target. Much better, in fact, because that'll make it very accurate for checking it with things like the targeting pod and so on. But nope, it is just not working. Anyway, that's how it would work if we didn't have bugs in the Hornet right now. Hopefully these are things that Eagle are going to address shortly. Let's reset the simulation and I'll move on to the C mode of the radar. Okay, so I've reset the simulation again. We're back at the same location and approaching this harbour area, and I've placed 2 ships up ahead. So let's go into surface mode. You can actually see them in the map mode quite well, but let's flip the master mode to C, and straight away we get bricks, just like we did in GMT. So let's see if we can lock these chaps up. I'm going to press sensor select switch right. There we go, I've got my cursor. I'm going to place my cursor over one of these ships and depress. And we're getting the same problem we had in GMT. I think the radar is bugged right now, sadly, in air-to-ground mode. The map modes seem to work correctly, but both the C mode and the GMT modes are not behaving the way they're supposed to. Let's see if we pop it into the expanded mode, if this is going to be any easier. No, absolutely not. So the realistic TDC is not working, and also the ability to lock a moving target is not working. So sadly, that's the best I can show you. What should have happened is the same as I described in GMT. I should have been able to lock up one of these bricks. Once I locked it up, it should have a little stem showing me its direction of travel. Left side of the brick, it should have confirmed the target's speed, and on the right hand side of the brick, it should have confirmed the target's current heading. You're going to have to just imagine how that would look, because sadly the radar is not working right now. That's so we're currently using DCS World 2.7.10. Clearly these modes are bugged in this version. I'll produce a bonus video demonstrating how these are supposed to look, but you get the idea. And much like in GMT, we have the interleaved option. So I can turn on interleaved and we get an indication of the terrain every second scan. That's quite useful for figuring out kind of the position of these targets, basically. And if we turn off interleaved, then we just have C mode, and it won't display the terrain as well. Okay, so a little bit anticlimactic. Sorry about GMT and C modes. Like I said, hopefully Eagle Dynamics will be addressing that at some point soon. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you all next time.